Welcome to the Chew Valley Forum. My name is Chris Head. I'm the Executive Director of the West of England Rural Network. Been working with the forum now for far too long. Can't remember how long it is, but it seems far too long. And this is our first meeting for quite a while. When was our last meeting, Sarah?
November. It was November, I think, last year.
November. Blimey. Feels like longer ago than that. No, that was a long time ago, actually. Though, anyway, wasn't it? Sorry. So we've got quite a full agenda tonight, but we are going to be finishing at 7:30. So wanted to make sure that we were very focused in what we were doing. So I won't waffle on for too long. The way we're going to manage the meeting is if you want to talk or you want to make a comment, please can you use the chat box. So yeah, people introduce themselves already in the chat, but if you can use the chat box as well to ask to make a comment, and Sarah and Alison from Baines are going to be keeping an eye on me, or an eye on the box. And if you type MIS, which is may I speak, in front of your comment, then you'll get brought in to make a comment, if that's okay. We are recording the meeting, and that's because this meeting will go up on the council's YouTube channel. So some of you will have been watching other meetings on the YouTube channel. This one will go up on the YouTube channel. So if you don't want to appear on the YouTube channel, can you make sure you turn off your video? Finally, we're going to be trying some electronic voting towards the end of the meeting, particularly around the role of chair and vice chair. And so Sarah's very bravely offered to do electronic voting. However, if you want to, I should say at this point, if you still are thinking about standing for chair or vice chair, could you let Sarah know in the chat, because we will need to configure the electronic voting accordingly whilst the meeting is going ahead. So if you need to contact Sarah about that electronic voting, and that's the only thing we're going to be voting on at the end of the meeting. But if you could do that now, that'd be really brilliant. We've had apologies from Sarah Warren, Deputy Council Leader, but I believe Councillor Alistair Singleton is on the call. Yes, Alistair's on the call. So welcome Alistair, wherever you are. You've moved on my screen already. He was on. Oh, there you are. Right, jumping around. Hi, Alistair. Thanks for joining us. We also had apologies from Jane Wildblood and Paul Smith from Avon Fire Brigade. So the first agenda, we've got a couple of agenda items at the beginning. So we're going to have the police, and then Becky from Public Health is going to be talking to us. Then we're going to move on to the main section of the agenda, which is the climate emergency discussion and the presentation of work from the Climate and Nature Emergency Group. And then Richard Deone from Baines Council is also joining us to talk about the planning update. And then we will do the AGM. The AGM we're going to do right at the end, and it's a really quick piece of work, hopefully, unless anybody wants to make any changes. But again, if you can let Sarah know in the chat, that'd be great. And then we will be over by 7:30, if that's okay. So we're up to 28 colleagues on the call now, and I'm not sure, is Martin Bragg on the call? I'm assuming that's the Martin. You're hiding behind a number, are you?
I'm just going through the screens, Chris, to see if I can see.
There was a number on it that looked like a police officer number. That's not Martin then.
No, I can't see. No, perhaps he's gone.
Okay,
they've gone out. So yeah, I think perhaps.
Okay, well, if Martin comes back in, we'll bring him in. But I'd like to then introduce Becky. If you're Becky, you okay to crack straight on? So Becky's joining us now as the Director of Public Health. You took over from Bruce last year, I think, didn't you? But it's really great. Thanks for coming out and talking to us about the about what's going on, and particularly about COVID, and particularly as colleagues on the call will be very aware that the Chew Valley has got one of the highest rates at the moment in England, I think, isn't it? Or certainly seems to be very high anyway. But if you, it's over to you, Becky, for a bit of an update on that. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, I was saying, Becky Reynolds, I was appointed on the 1st of April as Director of Public Health. Bruce retired at the end of March this year, so that's this year. So I was going to give an overview of COVID. So generally speaking, over the last 2 or 3 days, the picture in England has been a downward trend over the last few days, which is positive to see. What we're not quite so sure yet is we've only had 1 week since the 19th of July, when most of the restrictions were lifted and when nightclubs opened and all the social restrictions were lifted. So we are expecting to see a bit of an increase following that. For Baines, our rates are currently just under 700. They're 699 per 100,000. Last week, they were over 700, which was the highest we've ever got to, even higher than at the peak of the pandemic in January and then the earlier peak last year. But they've come down now to 699. And so that means over the past 7 days, 1,300 confirmed cases of COVID, new confirmed cases of COVID in Bath and North East Somerset. So we're higher than the England average, which is 532, and we're higher than the South West average, which is 491 per 100,000. And we have been for a couple of weeks now. In the RUH, we've got 17 confirmed cases, and they're a mixture of Baines residents and residents from North Wiltshire. So even though our cases are very high, the really good news is that we are nowhere near the number of cases that are in hospital with such high numbers as we saw in January. So that's incredibly positive. In our care homes at the moment, we have 39 cases in 17 care homes. And that's a mixture of about half residents and staff, slightly more staff, but approximately similar numbers for residents and staff. And what we're starting to see, as we are across the country, is we're starting to see people who are vaccinated, singly or doubly vaccinated, also now being admitted to hospital, which is as we would expect, because no vaccine is 100% effective. And once you start getting such high numbers of people having COVID in the community, a small proportion of them can translate to a large number of people, just because the overall pool of people who have COVID is so high. In our schools, for the period ending the 21st of July, we had 37 education settings. So that's a mixture of primary and secondary and independent schools that informed us of 1 or more cases. And certainly in the Chew Valley area, the secondary school and the number of the primary schools had quite a difficult time of it, in common with many other schools, but particularly the secondary schools. So the head teacher worked very closely at Chew Valley High School with our public health team in the local authority and with Public Health England to do absolutely everything that the school could do to manage the situation. As we all know, we've got the Delta variant now, which is incredibly much quicker. It transmits much more easily and much quicker. So we've seen spread in settings such as educational settings in a way that we hadn't seen earlier. So there has been quite a bit of disruption to schools in the Chew Valley area, but they have all worked with us incredibly well to manage the difficult situation. In terms of testing, rapid testing for people without symptoms, that's what I just want to put a question to you, if I may, when I finish speaking, in the chat box, because as part of the asymptomatic testing programme, I think we probably all know that up to 1/3 of us, people who have COVID, can transmit it without any symptoms. And so we're all encouraged to do rapid tests, to take rapid tests a couple of times a week. And so we're going to be having a mobile rapid testing van. And there are some locations that we've planned for the Chew Valley area. And so I wanted the person who's leading on that, Cathy McMahon in the public health team, would really value some feedback on your thoughts about those venues, and also whether there are any local community events happening during August and September that we could arrange the mobile van to be at as well, to encourage asymptomatic testing. In terms of vaccination, our rates for adults over the age of 18 is just under 82% of adults. Now nationally that's 88%, so we're below the national average in terms of the proportion of our adults vaccinated. And that's similar also for second dose. So 61% of adults over the age of 18 in Baines have had 2 doses, and that compares with 70% in England. Now that's largely because we have a relatively large proportion of younger adults over the age of 18, so between the ages of 18 and 30. And those younger age groups have only recently become eligible for the COVID vaccine. Even so, we are working really closely with our clinical commissioning group, and some of you will know that there was a pop-up clinic that was held at the Pavilion in Bath, and we are to try to encourage people to have more vaccination. We're doing everything we can to try to increase numbers, and there's close working between the public health team and the CCG and both universities to see if and how we can have pop-up vaccination clinics on site at the universities as well for when students arrive back. About a week ago, the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation nationally advised that children aged 12 to 15 at increased risk of severe COVID could be offered a vaccine. So that's children with severe neurodisabilities, Down syndrome, immunosuppression, and multiple or severe learning disabilities. We were all waiting to hear whether or not they would recommend all young people, whether that's over the age of 16 or over the age of 12, but they haven't done. So they've looked at the costs and the benefits, the risks and the benefits to children being vaccinated. And they've made the decision that it's just children aged 12 to 15 at increased risk of severe coronavirus. Young people aged 16, 17 are already, who are at risk of severe illness, are already eligible. The other group who they've advised are children and young people who are carers or who live with an immunosuppressed person. So any child or young person aged 12 to 17 who lives with someone who's immunosuppressed should also be offered the vaccine. And that's expected all to happen before schools start back in September. I'm not aware that it's available yet because the announcement's only recently come out, so the NHS needs to just plan how it's going to identify and offer those young people the vaccine. So at the moment, the JCVI is not currently advertising or currently advising on the routine vaccination of children of secondary school age. In terms of our mobile vaccination bus, the bus came around a number of areas 5 weeks ago, and so on Tuesday the 3rd of August it's due back at Stanton Court Nursing Home in the car park near Chew Magna, and that will be for people aged 40 and above, clinically vulnerable and not eligible for pregnant women. So that is coming to that site, and that will be 5 weeks since it was there. So it's really particularly trying to catch those people who had their first vaccination, but anyone who's eligible. I think that's probably it for an update, but I'm very happy to take any questions if any colleagues have any questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Becky. So were you going to put where are we going to put the proposed test sites in the chat?
I'll stick it in the chat box.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And just to confirm, that's not the lateral flow test, which we should all be doing anyway. This is a PCR test. Is that correct?
No, this is the lateral flow test. This is the lateral flow test. And this is just to try to make it easier for some people to get it who may not be able to access it otherwise. But it's to try to highlight and promote and encourage people to undertake that. So yes, it's an awareness raising thing, really.
Great. Thanks, Becky. There's I don't think I've got any immediate questions for you, but if you wanted to put that up in the chat, Becky, that'd be brilliant, and we'll ask people to sort of to give you feedback in the chat. You're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Very welcome also to drop off. Appreciate you've got very busy schedule at the moment, but we'll make sure that you get any feedback from Sarah and Alison. Is that okay?
Super, thank you. Yes, I'd love to stay around for a little while if that's okay. It's interesting to hear the concerns and the interests and the activities going on in the Chew Valley.
Brilliant.
I'll post the question now. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Becky, and thanks for joining us this evening. I believe, Martin, are you on the call now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Martin. Okay.
Sorry about that. We're having a few issues with the wonderful Avon and Somerset systems.
That's okay. Right, you got a couple of minutes to let us know what's going on then.
I have indeed, yeah. I've just put together a few things. Anyway, good evening, everybody, to start with. I've just gone back through a few of the crimes that we've recorded since the 24th of April of this year. I've just gone down for burglaries and so forth, not into domestics and suspicious activity. So just starting with dwelling burglaries, as in people's property. We've had 1 dwelling burglary from that date I've just given you. Non-dwelling burglaries, which would be sheds, garages and so forth. We've had 5. Out of that 5, 2 were very high value. They were around about the £20,000 to £25,000 worth of cycles, e-cycles and off-road motorbike that went missing. Thefts, we've had 9. These include thefts from people's number plates and thefts from stuff which is not locked away, cycles left out in front of people's gardens, stuff like that. Theft of motor vehicles, we've had 2 we can report. Theft from motorcycles, we've also had 2. So those would be along the lines of builders' vans getting broken into and the tools stolen and so forth. And criminal damage, we've had 4. So that's more or less a summary of the crime we've had, which, you know, in all honesty, is relatively good, I think. But obviously, we still ask people to remain vigilant during hot weather. Everybody's leaving their doors and windows open, so we try to get the message across, and that includes their cars as well. And also to continue reporting crime on 101 or the 999 number. And just to reassure you, if there's any concerns, which no doubt there have been in regards to speeding, we're still continue to carry out speed checks wherever necessary. That's about the gist of it on our side of it, like for the main of the Chew Valley. I have been asked by PC Mike Borwell, who looks after the harp trees, just to give a little update on his behalf, and very quickly, he's just sent me a message to say that the harp tree area has seen a quiet year for criminality, except a single night when 5 properties in East Harptree had garages broken into. This was undoubtedly the work of someone from Bristol, as a motorcycle was taken and was located in Hartcliffe. Basically the same as what I've just said, the warm weather doors and windows. And there's a little bit of good news on the bottom of his list, which was just to say that West Harptree Community Speed Watch has now been organised and will be active in the next week. This will no doubt help with the speeding issues in the area. Best wishes, Mike. So yeah, that's about it from our side of it. If you're happy with that, we're a little bit busy this evening.
That's really great, Martin. Thank you so much, and thank you for your time, and thank you for reporting that. And your usual message, I think, is the same, isn't it? It is about locking up your doors and your garages.
Yeah, it is very difficult. Everybody's sort of suffered with the weather the last few days. We all do it. I do it, and you leave the windows open. You leave the car unlocked with the windows down because you're going back out in 10 minutes. But unfortunately, that's how quickly it all happens. So yeah, just to be a little bit vigilant around that, really.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. And
okay, Chris, I'm going to leave you now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks. Bye now.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. So we are now, so this is good. So we're bang on schedule on the agenda. This is very good. So we're going to take the next the main item now, the substantive item on the agenda, which is under the heading of climate emergency. And colleagues will remember, well, if you can remember, actually pre-COVID, we had a meeting which Jane Wildblood came to in Chew Valley School when we used to meet at the school. So I think it was either January or February in 2020, wasn't it? And we met and we had a bit of a sort of presentation about various things about climate emergency, climate change, etc. And one of the outcomes of that meeting was that the forum agreed to set up a working group, or we subsequently took it to an online meeting at which we agreed to set up a working group. And the working group has been very busy meeting, and I'm really grateful to colleagues on the call today who have taken part in that process in those working groups. And particularly to Nick Baker, who's on the call somewhere. Nick's on the call at the moment, and to Jackie as well, Jackie Head, who both been leading on that work. And what we thought we'd do is we would introduce, or we'd ask them to talk a little bit about what they've been doing. It is a substantive item, so we've allocated about 50 minutes for them to speak, and just to find out what that climate emergency working group's been doing. And my understanding is that a number of people from that working group are going to talk a little bit about what they're actually doing as well. And then there will be an opportunity for people on the call to ask them questions if we've got enough time. If not, we can take the questions offline. So don't worry, you will have an opportunity for that. But I'm really grateful to everyone for joining in on the call tonight. It's really good to see everyone and for each to take part. So I'm going to hand over to Nick and Jackie, if that's okay. So take yourself off mute though. There was always one, isn't there?
Are you there, Jackie? Yeah, sticky mouse pad. I couldn't get my thing. Okay, I'm going to actually share my screen, but just before I do that, there are 10 of us on the call this evening. So if you are in the Climate and Nature Emergency Working Group, or you have been, wave your hand. Let everybody know who we are. Okay, we're a friendly bunch, and you'll be hearing from some of us. So I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. So it was 10 months ago that we set up the group, and so this is our 10-month progress report for this meeting. So we've been meeting once a month on Zoom. These are the parishes, the villages and parishes that are currently involved in the group. If your parish is not on that list, then please consider joining us. We'd love to have more parishes involved. We've got 11 involved at the moment. So this was the original aims that we had for the group, and this basically appears on our terms of reference. So I'm not going to read it to you, but you can see the sort of things that underpin the work that we're doing. And I think one of the most important things about it is how we're working together as much as what we're doing together. It's been really important to this group. So I guess the question is, how do you get a group of people who don't know each other to connect about something that's urgent, crucial, and huge? Actually, it's a process. It takes time to establish a group that can really look at those things. And so these are some of the ways that we've been working. This is about really paying attention to the process of the group and making everybody feel like their voice is as important as everybody else's. So acknowledging that there may be many different types of expertise, one of which might be the person who listens, who doesn't understand, and who asks a naive question that allows someone who understands better to explain something, and have to explain it in a simple way that allows more people to understand. So it helps both sides. So part of what we did was we were very formal in a sense in deciding our structures, our ways of working. We had a very clear vision about what we were going to be doing. We were going to be an action group, not a talking shop, not something that people pop in and out of, but something where people really take action. And part of what we had to do around that was to review our progress quite regularly and to agree those actions that we were going to take. So this is going to be annoying, isn't it? How do I get rid of the faces? I don't know. You're going to see it on my screen. I'm sorry about that. So let me go to the next slide. So when we first came to see you, this is what we put up on the screen, and we had only met once. So it was absolute speculation. We didn't know what we'd end up talking about, but we thought maybe we might be about looking at some of these areas. And what we wanted to do was to make sure that we had a very open process for arriving at what we were going to talk about and what we were going to work on. And these are some of the questions that we asked the group, really. So it's partly about what does your community want you to be talking about and working on, partly about what does your parish council want you to be working on, partly, and actually really importantly, what interests you, what fires you up to do something and to make change. And also we had to think about, well, where's the potential expertise? How does that narrow down our actions? And where's the leverage? Where can we actually make change happen? And this is what we ended up with: 4 subgroups: home energy, nature protection, sustainable transport, renewable energy. And we agreed that we would work in these subgroups for 6 sessions, so 6 months of work. And the reality is that it wasn't just 6 sessions of work, it was 6 months of work. So a huge amount of work has been done outside the meetings. And the sort of things we've been doing, you can see here on the screen. Different groups have interpreted different ways. And one of the important things we set up was that each subgroup really would be autonomous. They'd have, from the whole group, they'd have ideas of the actions that would be most popular to the members of the group and also to the parish councils. But in the end, they could choose what they wanted to narrow down on from those areas. So what we're going to do now is each of the subgroups is going to talk about what they have done. We're going to start with nature protection, and just to let you know, this sort of screen will appear before each subgroup, and this is the actions that were agreed on collaboratively in the group, and this is the order that of importance that the whole working group was placing on these items. So that's just to bring you into land, really. So nature protection, Heather is going to talk about nature protection. And Heather, if you want to do a Chris Whitty and say next slide when you want the next slide, I'll do my best.
Thank you, Jackie. Thanks. As Jackie's just been saying, these were the 4 areas that were identified by the whole group. When we came together as a subgroup, we felt that the 2 most important areas were those that we can see: wildlife corridors across the Chew Valley and tackling light pollution in the Chew Valley. And I think both of these sort of link into each other, and that was part of our thinking around that. But the one area that we focused on more than anything else was that of light pollution and dark skies. And really here just to say a very big thank you to a guy called Josh Jury, who was in our group, who is a local and nationally acclaimed conservationist, filmmaker, photographer. And he brought very special expertise and knowledge around dark skies and light pollution. So really that's been the main focus of the work. Sorry, Jackie, could you switch to the next?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we focused on 2 issues. Firstly, as I say, the dark skies, light pollution, and then secondly, trying to pull together information around wildlife corridors. And I mean, particularly sort of taking knowledge from the Chew Magna group that are quite a way along. I think what we know is that there are concerns in terms of light emission and the way in which security lights and large organisations have a lot of lighting at night. What we tried to do was to create a draft policy on light pollution, dark skies, and hoped that this would be of value to parish councils in the future, developing neighbourhood plans. But I mean, one of the other things we'd like to do is to really raise awareness of this and get into a dialogue with Bain's officers, so that something along the lines of the policy that we've drafted out really underpins future planning, discussions, decisions, and so on and so forth as we move forward. So we spent quite a lot of time with Josh leading us in terms of the dark skies policies. Link over is quite clear in terms of the link to bats, owls, the whole sort of moths, butterflies, everything, and so on and so forth. And what we're trying to do at the moment is to focus much more on the wildlife corridors and beginning to map hedgerows, new hedgerows that have been lost over the years, and with the aim of really sort of trying to superimpose mapping of hedgerows and, for instance, bats' flight paths for foraging on our dark skies, and where there is an interruption in the dark skies in terms of light pollution, and hoping to do something about that. One of the tools that we will need, but we've sort of not been able to achieve this as yet, is some sort of meter that measures light pollution and where lighting is particularly inappropriate. And that would help us a great deal in terms of taking things forward. So I think
Go to the next slide.
Yes, please. Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. The questions. So, I mean, what we hope is that we've been acting in accordance with what parish councils would like us to do. So just 2 quick questions. Is this helpful in terms of where we're focusing? And have we missed, have you identified any more pressing issues that you think need to be considered by the nature group across the Chew Valley?
Thank you, Heather. That's great. So hold those questions in mind. You might want to put something in the chat later, or you might want to actually ask that question later. So we're going to move on to the next group, which is the home energy group. And Michaela, you're going to talk for that group.
I am, thanks. Yeah, so I'm, for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm actually a council officer. I work in the council sustainability team, and I've been working with the members of the home energy group on this topic. So the home energy topic came up with there's six priorities actually across all the parish councils, which ranged from helping residents swap from heating away from fossil fuel, gathering resources in terms of signposting people to information, and then a few more practical projects. So they appear in the order on the screen as to those, the order that they were considered most important. Now, I should say that home energy is quite a tricky one, because actually we're talking here about people's individual choices about how they live and behave in their homes. So next slide, please, Jackie. I think we spent some time in the group actually just thinking about the role of the group within, as part of this working group, what the home energy group actually was trying to set out to do. So we discussed quite a lot about whether it was about us trying to deliver projects as a working group, or was it more about kind of getting the word out, and a bit more about that in a moment. I think that the other thing was that obviously we've come together as a group of parishes and co-opted parish councillors and co-opted parish members, and we're trying here to think about how it makes sense to work on these issues across a sort of wider Chew Valley area. And there was some, it's not actually always straightforward. The group, we've spent quite a lot of time doing research during the meetings, looking at each of those topics, and actually we focused more on the first 2 or 3 priorities that came forward. We haven't had chance over the course of the 6 months to look at the last 2, to be honest. We've been looking at good practice that's already out there, what some of the parishes are already doing. We've had guest speakers in, we've had additional meetings, and we've also done some research on the websites and directories and things, which was one of our priorities, to see what worked well and what doesn't. I think.
Do you want me to click to the next screen? I'm just thinking.
Yes, that probably makes sense. Thanks. Yep. So something that we want to take forward, I think, as a group, was this idea of the power of telling stories in terms of trying to nudge and encourage people and enable people to make energy efficient changes to their lifestyles and their homes. So we looked at a previous project that the council Transition Bath and Bath Preservation Trust ran many years ago, which was an open homes kind of couple of weekends, and we've got some case studies, and I think the group we've got quite a lot of contacts around the Chew Valley of examples within the Chew Valley, and I think that's the intention, is to try and collate some of those so that there's some local stories about some of the more complex and some of the more sort of simple changes that people have made to their homes. Directories and resources was an interesting one, because actually we found out that some of the parishes are quite far advanced in this field and have very extensive resources on their individual parish websites. And I think we've not actually, there's question marks under there, because we've not actually kind of really solved this one. We want to make sure that we're not, any proposals that we put forward to the forum or to our parishes, it's not going to be kind of duplicating effort by going over the top of what's already out there. And I think the main message from that bit of research was that there's already quite a lot of very good resources out there, and it's how we actually make best use of those is a sort of open question still.
Oh, that's 5 minutes. I'm going to click you to the next slide so you can quickly say something about that.
So, and then the final thing really was about the role of the working group and the how we take these things forward, was that it's about kind of getting the word out there. So using the resources that already exist, so through the Energy at Home website, which has got lots of it's got all the information about the government grants, loans and support that there is available for homeowners. So that's about spreading the word within the parishes, and then also using the parish network and community forum network to promote these other things about investing in your home to carry out energy efficient refurbishment or improvements, such as group buying solar panel schemes and the Energy Tracers project that hopefully will be coming to the Chew Valley in the autumn.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Michaela. So that's home energy. So now we're going to move on to renewable energy, and that's you, Nick. I'm going to start my 5-minute timer again.
Right, I'll try and stick to my 5 minutes. So I'm Nick Baker. I'm part of the Renewable Energy Group. So you'll see on the screen a three.
Sorry, that's me. I clicked. I was trying to bring your face up onto the screen, and I clicked by mistake.
That one, yeah. So yeah, so you'll see on the screen there the 3 objectives that the subgroup started out with. I think it's fair to say at the time we were not fully aware of the complexities involved in bringing forward renewable energy development, particularly in a location like the Chew Valley, with the sensitive nature of the landscape and its various protected designations. So after an initial review, we decided to take a step back from these objectives to take time to understand more about renewable energy and the steps necessary to bring forward renewable energy development in the valley, in particular looking at community schemes. So Jackie, if you could move to the next slide. So we've subsequently realigned our objectives to begin what we see as a valley-wide support mechanism that can assist parish councils and community groups in raising awareness and understanding more about the processes and issues involved in renewable energy development. And we're talking about commercial schemes, private schemes, and community schemes which could potentially happen in your community. So how do we do that? Principally by pooling the knowledge and experiences of parish councils and community groups in the valley and sharing this amongst ourselves. As we've begun to understand as a group, it's a daunting prospect getting a renewable energy scheme off the ground. And we feel that as a subgroup, we can help in those early stages of exploration and helping groups to gain an initial understanding of the issues involved. How can we help? We can help by assisting parish councils and community groups in making contact with experts in the renewable energy field. There are a lot of them out there, as we have discovered. For example, close to home, partnering and enabling organisations like Bath and West Community Energy. Bath and West Community Energy are currently assisting Chew Stoke Parish Council and Pensford Parish Council in identifying potential sites and looking at the feasibility of bringing forward potential schemes in their parishes. Also, we'd like to introduce you to the sustainability team in Baines, who we've got to know. and who we have found can assist with providing knowledge, encouragement, direction, and making connections with the multiple relevant parties involved. How else can we help? Well, there's the planning process, of course. We can help by assisting parish councils and community organisations understand more about the planning constraints specific to the Chew Valley. The local plan partial update consultation, which we're going to hear more about shortly, will affect the way renewable energy schemes are considered. So we're trying to learn more about those constraints and also the opportunities, so we can share that knowledge. So what if your parish council or a community group in your parish council is interested in renewable energy? You may want to develop your own community scheme. There may be a commercial scheme that is happening in your parish. Or you may want to start conversations and raise awareness of renewable energies with the people in your parish. Well, please do get in touch with us. We'd love to be able to help you navigate through the issues involved in renewable energy development. In particular, our focus is on encouraging community energy schemes. So yeah, please do get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for that. And now we're going to talk about sustainable transport subgroup, and Ian, you're going to talk us through this group.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, my name's Ian. I've lived in the Chew Valley area, Bishop Sutton, for over 40 years. My wife and myself have raised 2 children here, so I think that although I've got no expertise in the transport field, that we've experienced most of the problems which are familiar to people in the Chew Valley. Some of those were my wife and myself both had jobs which required cars to be used, so we quickly became a 2-car family. As the boys grew up, they progressed from push bikes to mopeds, and that brought about the problems of visits to A&E after they've come off, etc., etc. So we then became 2 cars, 2 mopeds. One of those boys went on to attend St. Brendan's College, and he then purchased a car, and again this brought about more problems putting it together again at weekends after he had broken it, and even one time dealing with the insurance company after a Porsche had run into the back of his little Fiat Cinquecento, which was quite amusing. But so we've seen a lot of the problems, and we ended up being 2-car family, 1 motorbike, and a sort of banger of a car for one of the boys. And essentially that sort of experience led me to think, well, let's see what some of the possible solutions might be, and a good starting point for that is what have we actually got in the Chew Valley at the moment. Could I have the next slide, please, Jackie? Yeah. So we did some research into community transport. We've looked at what else is happening throughout the country. There's some surveys which have been done, which Jackie's going to speak to more in a minute. Next slide, please, Jackie. Right, this is some of the areas which I got interested in and had a look at. So I was interested in what some of the car shares, and what I found was that in all of the urban areas, both in Bath and North East Somerset and surrounding areas, there are car schemes available. And these are where you ring in and you say, I want a car for a certain amount of time, and you pay you pay by the amount you pay as you go, essentially. The downside for Chew Valley residents for those is that most of those are returned to the location where you picked it up from. So people would have to travel into one of the urban areas to pick up a car, then use it and return it, with the problem of then how do you get back into the Chew Valley? So what is used in the Chew Valley is some of the app-driven car share schemes, lift share schemes, sorry, and these are the ones which are app-driven are on a formal basis. Quite often, you as the passenger contribute to the mileage, contribute by the miles to the driver of the car. But there's also quite a lot of informal lift sharing going on in the valley, where people work in the same areas and share a lift in. There is one car hire scheme operating, which I'm aware of from which operates from the Chew Valley Caravan Park. That's mainly for people using the Chew Valley Caravan Park, but nonetheless, it's still a useful initiative, because it does mean that instead of people moving around in their motorhomes or large cars to travel around the area and wider afield whilst they're staying at the caravan park, they're actually using a small car. And that scheme is very economical, and perhaps there's a model there which could be could be adapted a bit more around the Chew Valley. Next slide, please.
You've had your 5 minutes, so just perhaps say something quickly on this one.
Okay, right. Then there's the bus services, which everybody will be aware of, and the other things which happen, niche services for specific areas. You can see them on the slide there, and the 2 dial-a-ride schemes. And our next steps are to explore more with the dial-a-ride and how it can be used in this area. Sorry about that, Jackie.
No, brilliant. Well done, Ian. That's really good. Ian did a huge amount of research work on this, so it's very difficult to confine it to the amount of time. Just to say one more general thing about the next steps for this group. We've actually got a meeting in August where, unusually for us, we're all going to get together in the whole group. So what we've been doing thus far is we've been having breakout rooms on Zoom and going into small subgroups and just having a little bit of time in the whole. But in August, we're going to reflect on things, think about how it's gone so far, and then decide what we want to do next. We are going to do some networking. We've got people going to Valley Fest, people going to Chewstoke Harvest Home, and also the other things you can see there on the screen we have plans to be involved in. And we are also trying to influence into the formal systems that exist, the parish councils, Baines Cabinet, WECA, etc. So that's what we're trying to gently, as you probably got a feel of it, trying to start a bit of a change process so that we do bring carbon down in the Chew Valley. What we wanted to just talk to you a bit about now, and I'm going to do this little bit, so I'm going to put the timer on for myself. Yeah, there we go. So one of the things we've done in the Sustainable Transport Group, we wanted to just talk to you about it because it sort of is an example of how a group like this can actually do something quite across the whole valley. And so we were aware, as Ian has spoken to you about, that the public transport and community transport in the valley has a whole load of issues that are problematic, and we wanted to try to find out if there were solutions. And these are the kind of challenges that people will be aware of in terms of trying to reduce carbon down in our transport. But these are some of the opportunities that we started to find out about. We didn't really know about them when we started this group, but you know, I went to a conference about how they managed rural transport in the Highlands of Scotland, for instance. We all learnt about what WECA has as a vision, you know, for multimodal transport and so on. And so there are lots of things going on right now that actually mean that potentially now is a moment when we could perhaps get better public transport in the Chew Valley, and also perhaps encourage more people to walk and to cycle, use active travel methods. So we've done 2 surveys. The first one is the Sustainable Transport survey for post-16. This is one of the comments, I think it's classic, really. This is one of the comments that a parent put onto a Facebook group when they saw the survey going around about their sixth formers. And there is this crazy thing at the moment that children are taken to school until they're at the end of the what used to be year 5, as we called it, and now come into sixth form, and actually it's all change. It is possible to ask for a place on the lower school bus if you're in the sixth form, but only 22% of Chew Valley sixth form took up a place last year. So it's clearly, at the moment, that means there's an awful lot of people, 78%, who are getting to school mainly by car, their own car, their parents' car. So we did a survey. We only gave students 2 weeks. We sent it to year 10, year 11, year 12 and year 13. So that's the sixth form and the 2 years before it. And we had 132 responses, so quite a small survey. And the sort of things we were asking about, we wanted to know what they're doing now. We wanted to know what it would take for them to actually change to lower carbon options. And we wanted to understand what the hurdles were. I would encourage you to read the report. There's a lot of information there, and we are in discussion both with Baines and with Chew Valley School about possible ways forward. But I'm just going to give you a snapshot of a couple of things. This is what the present year 10, 11, 12 and 13, how they get to school. If you consider that year 10 and 11 almost entirely go by school bus, that accounts for that great big tall one there. But this one is a reflection largely of the sixth form, that the students are driving themselves in their own cars, or they're being driven by their family. It's really only a handful that are using other methods, and only one student reported using public transport, which is unsurprising because there just aren't the routes there. We asked them what they'd prefer. If they couldn't go by car, what would their preferences be? And the thing I find interesting about this, if you look at all the blue, that represents buses of some sort. This would be their preferred one, a sixth form specific minibus, lots of reasons for that. But actually they also, a public transport bus would be popular, space on a lower school coach. So if you put those 3 blue bits together, it's more than half would like to be going to school on a coach or a bus. And about a quarter would be interested in more active travel, particularly if they not only did they have the push bike, but they could have an electric bike or an electric scooter. That whet our appetite for doing a bigger survey. So we, for a month, we put out a survey to households across the Chew Valley. And these are the responses came from a wider area than the Chew Valley, which really reflects the fact that some people want to travel into the Chew Valley and so wanted to comment on the difficulties they were experiencing with that. We managed to reach 410 households. And we asked them, how do you travel? How does your household travel in a typical week? And there is masses of data in this survey. I really would encourage you to read the report in full, but I just want to give you a feel of it, really. So we asked them where they travel. And it's interesting, if you look, that half of the travel that takes place in the Chew Valley is within the parish or the Chew Valley. The next big chunk is Bristol, then Midsummer, Norton and Wells. and only then Bath. So although we are Bath and North East Somerset, Bath is not the centre of the Chew Valley's experience of travel. We asked them where they worked, and the majority were travelling to Bristol. There were a few who were heading off somewhere further, maybe London or Birmingham or Cardiff. There were quite a few that were working within the parish and the Chew Valley. And again, not a huge number going to Bath. This, I think, is one of the most interesting slides. We asked them about how they travel to work and how far they travel to work, and we put those facts together. So those 410 households travelled 20,000 miles on average in an average week. That's what they do now. And look how many are doing it in a private vehicle. So it's a real challenge to decarbonise when that's the habit of now. We also asked where people socialise, and it was interesting to see how many socialise within the parish and within the valley. And again, then Bristol comes up a lot higher than Bath, for instance, and Wells, you know, is higher than Bath. Wells and Midsummer Norton is higher than Bath. Then we wanted to ask them about the future, and we were trying to find out, the key thing we wanted to find out was which methods, which lower carbon methods would be most popular, so that we could go to Baines and say, if you were to introduce this, you might get some traction. And this is what we discovered, a really strong preference for a public transport shuttle bus that would travel, would allow people in the villages to go between the villages and to the main services on the A37 and A38. And that was seen to be something that would really potentially be a game changer for people in the valley. We asked them what would change their behaviour. And so you can see that one comes up, that bus comes up as 76% would be likely or very likely to change. The other thing was about active travel, and what was clear was a lot of families have bicycles and a lot of people cycle for leisure, but very few cycle to work or as part of their work journey. And the key issue that just kept coming up was, if I could cycle more safely on parish roads, then that would be very likely to change my behaviour. These were the top three, and this one I think is interesting as well, that if that change decreased my carbon footprint, actually that would make people very likely or likely to change. And I think that's the kind of something that's useful for Baines to know and for parishes to know, that actually if you lead on the idea of, we want to do this because it might lower your carbon footprint, you might actually get really good buy-in. So these were the recommendations that we came up with and that we've passed on to Baines and to WECA. As I said, we've already had a meeting with Baines, and we're hoping to be able to meet with WECA and also to join a forum that they're setting up for to look at transport in rural areas. So I won't read it to you, but you can see the things that we were recommending. The one thing I would draw your attention to is this one here. It was really clear that people in the Chew Valley don't trust public transport at the present time, and they don't know about all the public transport options that are available to them. And so it felt important to us that there was really a grassroots up communication plan to build up that trust, so that people would step on buses again, or would join in. They would get on their bikes to go to a bus stop, knowing that they could lock their bike safely at the bus stop, that kind of thing. We also asked about electric vehicles, and that did come up a fair bit. And I just thought this was interesting for parish councillors in particular to see that in order to change to electric vehicles, it was clear that people wanted financial incentives for that. They wanted to get something from it financially. They wanted help with it financially. So that's, I guess, a message beyond this valley. But they also wanted fast local charging points. And one person actually said, which I thought was just a great idea, they said, wouldn't it be great if every village in the Chew Valley had a fast local charging point right next to their parish hall? So I leave that thought with you. How are you using your SIL money in your parish? Is that a possibility? Okay, so that's our little presentation. We're meeting in August. We'd love your feedback, and I'll stop sharing my screen. And I hope that's done in a sort of a reasonable time. I'll leave it to the chair to tell us how much time we could have for questions, if at all.
That's great. Thanks, Jackie, and thanks everybody on who took part in that. That's really brilliant. We will send the slides around after the meeting, so you've got a bit more time to digest them. And we'll also make sure that includes the link to the transport survey that Jackie was talking about, which is a really thorough and detailed piece of work. We've got time. I've got about 8 minutes, Richard, if that's okay, until you start at 7:10. Is that okay? So I've got 8 minutes to ask questions. If anybody wants to, we will carry on after the meeting finishes at 7:30, because one of the disadvantages with Zoom meetings is you never get those chances to have those conversations as you're stacking the chairs up or clearing away coffee cups. So we will have an official end at 7:30, but we will then also carry on if colleagues are happy to stay on the call after 7:30. But we wanted to make sure we gave people the option to disappear off at 7:30. Having said that, however, I don't know if anybody's got any immediate immediate questions. I haven't got any in the chat, but has anybody got any questions? You just, if you've got the video on, put your hand up and we'll have a go at answering it. Sorry, I'm not missing anything from the chat. I've got Angelina's got a hand up. So go ahead, Angelina.
Hi, yeah, I'm.
You could say where you're from as well. Sorry.
Yes, yeah, I'm from Shoscombe Parish Council, and we've formed Shoscombe Climate and Nature Group. We aren't currently working with our other parishes at the moment, and that's something we would definitely consider. So I suppose I've got two questions really. How has it been to pull all the parish councils together? What the challenges have been? And more personally, I'm involved with mapping and doing a survey of our habitats in Shoscombe in order to find out what we've got in our area, all the habitats, and create corridors and protect the nature that we've got here. And I'm just interested in the process from what you've done in terms of your focusing on hedgerows, first of all. So yeah, I'm just at the initial stages of that survey, so I'd be really interested to hear any more information about that.
Thanks, Angelina. What we'll do, we'll quickly answer that question if possible. I'll ask Heather to perhaps come in on the environmental stuff. I didn't, Jack, or whether you wanted to bring in someone else to talk about parish councils, but we can talk to you. One of the things that we wanted to do was to talk separately to other forums about what we're doing. So I'll just address those points straight away, and then we'll talk to you separately offline about the other how we've set the other stuff up, if that's okay. Because I know we've got someone else on the call from another parish for it as well, who's trying to find out the same stuff as you, Angelina. So
if I just say, in terms of the how do you get the parishes working together, we actually decided, Nick and I had this kind of vision of this group where it wouldn't just be parish councillors. It would be 2 representatives from parish councils. So in some parishes, we've got 2 people who are not parish councillors, and they feed back to the parish council and they ask for ideas from the parish council. We've got some groups where both reps are parish councillors, and we've got some where maybe there's 1 parish councillor and 1 not. And I think that we wanted to be a working group, not a parish council meeting. Quite a different sort of flavour and a different feel, and I think that can be very useful. And also because, I mean, certainly in East Hartpury we had our own climate and nature emergency working group, and many do, Chew Magna does, others do, and we wanted those people who were working in those areas to be able to join this group, and many of them weren't parish councillors. So that was one of the ways we helped it work. The other thing is that most of our parish councils ask for our minutes, and so they get all the paperwork, if you like, from our meetings, so they can keep up with it that way.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Heather, I don't know whether you wanted to come in and say anything about the hedgerow mapping, for example.
Yeah, just very briefly. Thank you, Chris. I think we were lucky because Chew Valley had already done a neighbourhood plan, which was a neighbourhood plan that encapsulated a lot of the parish councils, as indeed did Stowe Sutton, where I'm a parish councillor. And those neighbourhood plans had done a lot of work in terms of pulling together information on hedgerows and foraging paths and so on and so forth. The other thing that's we're quite lucky about is that we have SSSI's, Avon Wildlife Trust, Mendip AONB, all within the Chew Valley area. So they too have a wealth of information. So it's about sort of trying to trawl what information is already out there, if that's helpful. I mean, Jackie Morgan is here, one of the attendees. I don't know if she wants to say anything more specific.
Did you want to say anything, and you can chip in about some of the other stuff you've been doing with your colleagues in East Hertfordshire as well? But you're on mute. No,
I think you mean Jackie Morgan, not
Jackie
me.
Sorry,
Jackie Morgan is the wildlife person in our team.
Did you want to say anything, Jackie? No, you're still on mute though, Jackie. Right, you're off mute now.
No, sorry, I don't know much about the hedgerow project that Heather talked about in Chumagno. It was done. I did one years and years ago, and they're saying that the information has mostly been lost, so that's not helpful.
But what were you up to on Thursday night though, Jackie?
Yes, I know. Yes, I will mention that the bat survey that I'm helping East Hertfordshire do, because East Hertfordshire are doing something similar in that they want to know what wildlife they've got in order to increase numbers. So they've involved a lot of people across the valley, training them to be able to survey the type of bats that are in the area. And I have to say, I'm really enjoying it. I've done it twice now. Is that okay, Chris?
Thanks, that's brilliant, Jackie. Yeah, sorry for putting you on the spot there. Heather, is that you? Have you got your hand up there, Heather? Yeah, but you want
Yes, thanks, Chris. Just when Jackie was mentioning bat surveys, the other thing that's been quite useful to get one's head into in terms of bats, owls and so forth, is some of the environmental assessments and the bat assessments that planning officers have actually asked for when considering barn conversions and other properties within the planning process. And they do contain a lot of information about which bats and frequency and so on and so forth.
Okay. That's great. Thanks, Heather. I've got Sally Davis has put a comment in the chat, which we'll take up separately. Sally, thanks very much for putting that comment in. I know that's a fairly common observation that has been made about that. Michaela, you've got your hand up, and then I'm going to draw it to a close because I want to bring Richard in. So sort of last point from Michaela, please.
Two very quick ones, if I may. First of all, something that hasn't come out in this discussion is that through the work of the working group, and I think primarily the transport survey, there's been a really good communications network database created, which I think is going to pay off with future work. That the working group wants to do. So I think I just wanted to kind of note the value of that. And the second thing was with the home energy group particularly, it's about more, lots of the work there is about a kind of ongoing messaging, communications, awareness raising of not necessarily delivering projects, but actually highlighting and flagging up to residents that there are these options and not forcing them one way or another to do this or do that. And I think what we've identified as the home energy group is at the moment there's not sort of an overarching anchor place for that, which we sort of covered in the research when we were looking at resources, but in terms of who sort of, what umbrella does it come under?
Okay, well, that actually sort of segues very neatly into my closing comment for that, which is that when we set the group up, we said that the group would be set up for, it was a task and finish group for 12 months. Is that correct? I think that was correct. Yeah. So you've had a fair chunk of time. My understanding is that everybody wants to carry on this group. or so that you're actually happy to continue with this piece of work. So we wanted to bring this to the forum now, so that people both had an opportunity to join in with the work that's still carrying on, and to say that we you know, the forum really values the work you've been doing, and we really look forward to it continuing and some actions coming out of it. So if colleagues are happy with that, and I'm really grateful for everybody on the call that's either presented or I know that's been taking part really actively in the group, you know, despite all the other stuff that's been going on that Becky's been having to deal with. This has been going on underneath the surface and has been really working really hard. So I'm really grateful to everyone on the call for that. What we're going to do as well, I'm going to go to Richard next, but we will, at the end of the meeting, we will we'll keep on at 7:30, and then we'll have a bit more of a conversation, a bit more relaxed conversation. I'm not going to be quite so clock watching at that point, if that's okay. So just say thank you very much to everybody who's been involved in that and who's presented tonight and who has taken part in those little working groups. Very grateful. So Richard, I'm going to hand over to you now, if that's okay. And we wanted just to bring Richard in to just really to talk about the update on the forthcoming plan. And again, because I know planning is quite a complex issue, and it is of interest to many people on the call in different kind of ways. What I didn't want to do is I didn't want to get into a Q&A session with Richard. So if we can take any questions offline with Richard, either directly or through your parish council or through the parish liaison committee or through the Chew Valley neighbourhood plan, if that's okay. So I'm not going to be taking questions for Richard. So I hope that's okay, Richard. And I hope that people will be able to interact with you in whatever means are necessary. So over to you, Richard.
Thanks, thanks, Chris. I think, Sarah, I've emailed through some slides. Yeah, thank you for putting those up. Yeah, so it's been really, really interesting, I have to say, to hear the experiences of the various groups that have been working on the climate and ecological emergency and sort of nature and biodiversity concerns, because that's exactly what we're looking to address at the moment through planning policy updates. You know, the planning system is only part of the solution, but we need to make sure that our policies are the best in place that can, in effect, if you like, help enable the right decisions to come forward, so that the planning system can do its bit in terms of trying to address both the climate and the ecological emergencies. So thank you, Chris, for letting me come to tonight. Just really wanted to give a little bit of a brief update on some of the consultations that are coming up shortly. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Sarah, thanks. So yeah, as I've already said, at the moment we are focusing on updating the policy framework primarily to address the climate and ecological emergency, but also a number of other urgent issues, which I'll come on to briefly. So we've got a consultation period coming up from the end of August through to the start of October. And there's 4 policy documents which we're consulting on all in parallel, so because they are all interrelated. So there's the partial update of the local plan, which I'll come on to. Then there's the energy efficiency, retrofitting and sustainable construction supplementary planning document, one on transport and development, and another one on houses and multiple occupation. That's primarily a Bath issue, so that's not particularly relevant, I have to say, to the Chew Valley parishes. Next slide, please, Sarah. Thanks. So in terms of the local plan, firstly, it is, as its title suggests, a partial update. So we're only updating specific parts of the core strategy and the placemaking plan. So it's not a full review, but the areas we're really focusing the update on is, as I've said, so in terms of the climate emergency, that's the main driver for updating the policies, and that includes a policy that is going to look to facilitate renewable energy infrastructure by trying to really provide a more positive strategy to try and guide proposals for the right type of renewable energy infrastructure to the right parts of the district, based primarily around landscape potential, but also making sure that we protect and avoid harming the most important habitats. Also now looking towards a zero carbon construction policy, so that's all about minimizing energy use in buildings based on sustainable construction techniques, but then any residual energy demand, meeting that through on-site renewable energy wherever possible. and also a whole range of policies on sustainable transport. So that's putting at the heart of development decisions sustainable, low carbon modes of transport rather than the private car. And that very much aligns with what you've been talking about tonight. In terms of the ecological emergency, a number of policies being looked at there in terms of protecting, both designated but also undesignated priority habitats and facilitating enhancement through the Nature Recovery Network and delivering that through biodiversity net gain. So that will be requiring developers to deliver a net gain to biodiversity through their development schemes. The other issues less focused around the climate and ecological emergency are addressing a housing supply shortfall. We have to maintain what's called a 5-year land supply. The moment we can't, as an authority, we start to lose control over where housing will come forward. So we are looking to allocate additional sites for housing. They will mainly be brownfield sites in Bath and Keynsham, in those areas that are best served by sustainable means of transport. Green recovery, that's all around, really trying to protect important employment sites from things like student accommodation and residential development. And then Greenbelt villages, this does apply to a number of parishes within the Chew Valley. This is really in order to meet changes in the planning system that have arisen through legal proceedings. It's about trying to define boundaries within which small-scale housing schemes can come forward. Next one, please, Sarah. So where are we in the process? We've gone through a launch process last year, and then we had an options consultation earlier this year. We're now at the draft plan stage. So I have to say this consultation is quite formal, and people have an opportunity to comment on it's basically whether the plan is sound, and it's a bit of a technical term. It's whether it's justified by evidence and whether it's deliverable and whether it's in line with national policy. The draft plan that we're preparing now and we're about to consult on, that plan and all of the comments then go to an inspector appointed by the government to undertake an examination, and that examination will take place towards the end of this year, early next year, and then hopefully the council will be in a position to adopt the updated policies by the summer of next year. So that's where we are in the process in terms of the upcoming consultation. Next slide, please, Sarah. Oh, yeah, if you can go back just one. So just to briefly talk about a couple of the supplementary planning documents. So the first one is the energy efficiency retrofitting SPD. So this is at the moment we've got two SPDs, one on retrofitting and one on specifically energy efficiency in historic buildings. We're looking to combine those SPDs and really to make them more positive than the current guidance. And they'll also be updated. So that includes more up-to-date information on the sort of measures homeowners can introduce into their properties to make them more energy efficient, as well as trying to make that a more user-friendly document. So particularly a website format where people might, for example, be able to click on a house type on a particular part of a building, maybe click on a window and look at the double glazing options they might have for their home, for example. And that links in again with the energy at home project that Michaela was talking about earlier. So the next slide, please, Sarah. And then in terms of the transport and development supplementary document, that'll have four main sections. So one on parking, both in terms of standards. So that is trying to in effect reduce the amount of car parking available to new properties, again, to help encourage moves towards more low carbon means of transport. It'll also include standards for new development, providing ultra low emission or electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So wherever an off-site parking space is provided, developers will also be required to provide electric vehicle charging infrastructure as well. The third section is around walking and cycling infrastructure design. So that's to make sure that cycleways and pedestrian and walking routes, you know, are more accessible, they're safer, they're more secure, and they're just better for people to use. Again, it's all around trying to encourage that shift to people walking and cycling. And the last section is on travel plans guidance. So that's guidance really for large scale developments, again, to encourage modal shifts. So again, shifting that from the use of the private car to buses and trains and walking and cycling. So those are the main documents on which we're consulting that are particularly relevant to Chew Valley. Next slide, please, Sarah. Conscious I'm nearly out of time, probably am out of time. So the consultation period, just as a reminder there, August through to October. The consultation will be publicised using a variety of media, including mail outs to all the parish councils, but also lots of other organisations and individuals that are on our mailing list. There'll be a series of events to support the consultation. I have to say, because of COVID, we won't be having a whole series of physical events, really to minimise the risk to, you know, the community and indeed to staff of the council. So the events will be virtual events, online events, including webinars and briefings with parish councils on a whole range of subjects. Again, online response is not required, is encouraged to the consultation. So that, you know, we'll make that as user friendly as possible, but people can still submit paper copy comments if they need to do so. What I would encourage all of you on the call tonight is if you can also encourage your residents and your communities to also respond to the consultation. You know, the more response we get, the better the end result will be, both in terms of the partial update and particularly in terms of the supplementary planning documents. So, you know, just to reassure everybody, the council will very, very carefully consider any comments we get. And in terms of the partial update of the local plan, they'll also be carefully considered by the inspector. So, yeah, the overall message is, yeah, please get your comments in. Please make your views known, what you like and what you don't like about what we're putting forward, and then we can carefully consider those and make amendments to the documents before they're finalised. So that's me done, Chris.
Brilliant.
Sorry if I've run over slightly.
No,
and
that's
as you say.
So, Rich, what we'll do is we'll send the slides out with the pack, and we'll make sure that people have got your contact details as well. I'm assuming things like the evidence that's gathered through the Climate and Nature Emergency Working Group could be submitted as evidence and support of what we come up with, as what an idea we come forward with. That would be helpful to you, I'm guessing. That would be very helpful. Yeah, I mean, we've also undertaken evidence base, obviously, but that applies, you know, in effect across the whole of BAME. So any more locally specific evidence we can get that will, you know, supplement and support what we're trying to achieve, then yeah, so much the better. I mean, let's move forward together on this. I think we're all wanting to achieve the same thing, which is great. And you know, I'm confident we can, you know, through the planning system, but also more importantly through the actions of local communities, we actually can most definitely make a difference. Okay, thanks, Richard, and thank you very much for agreeing to be last on the agenda, but I thought it was useful to hear what was going on before, so that's really helpful. Thanks so much, Richard. Excellent. Okay, right, we're a little bit behind schedule now, but that's okay. It's all good stuff. So we're going to go into the AGM now, which is something that each forum has to do annually. Although this isn't quite annual, we're slightly over annual, but the last meeting was held on 24th of February. Because we're not a decision-making group and because we don't carry out any major functions, the minutes were circulated, or the minutes of the last AGM were circulated with the papers. We've had no comments back on them. There were no actions on the minutes, so we're just taking those as read. Similarly, the chair's annual review was circulated with the paper, and because of what was been going on in the last 12 months, we haven't done a specific Chew Valley report. And it's a generic report that's being presented to all of the fora, just to say what the foras have been doing and what they're intending to do. The only small piece which we have to do as part of the review is the forum does appoint a representative on the airport. I'll get it right. On the Bristol Airport Consultative Committee. So this is in addition to what your parish councils or the ward councillors do. The forum is allowed to appoint someone, and at the moment our appointee is Councillor Roy Hill from Stanton Drew Parish Council, and our understanding is that Roy is happy to continue in that role if colleagues are happy, and I will take that as read unless I have anybody that's absolutely desperate to come in. So Karen, you...
No, I'd second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. So Roy, I'm grateful to Roy's work in the last year, and I'm grateful that he's able to continue to be our representative on that consultative committee. The next one is to review and amend the terms of reference if required, and there have been no, as far as I'm aware, there have no proposed changes to terms of reference. Is that right, Sarah?
Yeah, we've not received anything to date, so unless anybody's got any urgent changes proposed tonight, then they remain as they are.
Okay, so now, and don't turn your mic off because now I'm handing over to you, Sarah. So this is the bit where myself and Heather leave the virtual room and you talk about us behind our backs. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I'd like to thank you both, Chris and Heather, and I'm sure on behalf of all the forum members, for your continued excellent chairing and support for the forum. And I'd like to extend that thanks also to the working group. I think you'll all agree how impressive their work and what they've done over the last year. I think we're an excellent example of how what the forums are about really is about grassroots collaboration, and you've certainly shown that tonight. So thank you to everyone involved. There's been huge amounts of work, and whilst we've been absent, you've been beavering away doing your thing. So thank you for everything you've done. So I hope I don't let you all down now. We're going to trial a virtual poll for the appointment of the chair and the vice chair. I haven't had any other proposed nominations for those posts, so we're just taking it unless anybody, if I just quickly look around the screens, unless anyone's got any burning desire to stand as chair or vice chair. No, okay, I'll take that as no. So if everyone's happy, I'm going to post up now a poll, and now it's not working, so just bear with me. I've had problems with internet tonight, so just bear with me while I try and get the poll activated. Right, I'm going to launch the poll, and I'd like you to, hopefully you can see the poll. Is everyone seeing the poll that's posted? Yeah. So if you could all do your voting now. So we're looking at a reappointment of Chris Head as chair and Heather Clewitt as vice chair.
This is anonymous, isn't it, Sarah? So I don't know who's voted against.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So hopefully we'll end the poll very shortly. So I'll give you a bit more time to do some voting, if that's all right. Has everybody voted, or do you need a little bit longer to vote? No? Okay, so we have only one abstention, but the rest is the majority have voted for both chair, Chris and Heather to be reappointed as the chair and vice chair. So thanks very much, and it didn't go too badly. I hope you all agree that wasn't too painful. So thank you very much.
That's really good, Sarah. Thank you very much. I thought you were going to have to. I thought we were just going to revert back to the old school and show of hands and stuff like that. So, well, look, I'd just like to say thank you very much for just reconfirming that we're doing an excellent job. I have to say, and I think as you know, with Heather's support, I say this, that that actually the support that we get from Sarah and from Alison in particular, and Michaela from the council was just brilliant, and we really couldn't be doing it without them. I'm really grateful for the support, their support and their encouragement. I just rock up at these meetings and chair them, and they do all the other stuff behind the scenes. So thank you to Sarah and to Alison in particular, and to Michaela. And thanks very much everyone for coming along tonight. We're 1 minute behind schedule, but just to remind people that we're going to have another meeting in October, and we're going to be having a joint meeting with the Somer Valley Forum, and the single item on the agenda of that meeting will be about health and well-being, because colleagues on the call will be aware that we share a thing called Three Valleys Health, which is all of the primary care, the big primary care network that stretches right the way from Chewstoke all the way through to Midsummer Norton, Radstock, Poulton, Timsbury, Peasdown, St John. So we're going to be holding a joint session with the Somer Valley Forum, looking at health and well-being, and that's in October, and we'll make sure you get plenty of advance note of that. And it'd be really great to see you all. Really happy to stay on the call now. I'm going to draw this meeting to a close. So I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone that's that stayed with us for the hour and a half. A few people have dropped off. Their names have been noted, so that's all right. But we will, we're really happy to stay on and have that informal conversation as we would if we were stacking the chairs up or taking away coffee cups. But also you are now very entitled to leave and go and have your tea or watch what's ever on telly. So no, we won't be taking note of people's names who are leaving now. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for your support, and thanks. See you in October.